Okay, the last 16 chapters of Genesis about the life of Joseph. Joseph was a young man who was hated by his brothers. He had dreams that his brothers and mom and dad would bow down to him. And so his brothers hated him, and he was already the favorite son of Jacob. So his brothers hated him even more, and they finally took him and sold him into slavery to Egypt. And so Joseph goes to Egypt as a slave, and as a slave there, he becomes a trusted slave and becomes a great leader in Egypt and ends up being second in command to the king of Egypt. And so the book of Genesis ends with Joseph dying in Egypt. Jacob died, and then Joseph, his son, died. And there's a 400-year gap between Genesis and Exodus. And in that time, Israel is enslaved by the Egyptians. And so Exodus begins with a new king coming in, and you can read my book and discover that this is the Hyksos kings who did a military coup on the government of Egypt. And so the Hyksos took over Egypt, and they didn't know about Joseph. And they were afraid of the Jews, afraid of the Israelites, and so they enslaved them. And so the first 20 chapters of Exodus is the story of how Israel got out of Egypt. The way they got out was God did 10 great miracles, great plagues through Moses, who saw the burning bush and obeyed God and went to Egypt. And God did plague after plague after plague after plague. 10 plagues, the last one finally killing the firstborn son of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And so there is a dynasty breakdown at that point in the history of Egypt. And so Israel is set free. They're forced to go out, and they end up taking all the wealth of Egypt with them. And then the army of Egypt, when Pharaoh changes his mind again because of his hard heart, he goes after Israel and comes up with all his army behind Israel, and Israel's backed up against the sea, and it seems like a hopeless situation until God does something amazing. And we'll talk about that on the next video.